While all of these shows are amazing to look back on with fondness, a lot of it could be attributed to nostalgia. It's that strong feeling that can convince us a show was good, when in fact, it was probably just okay. However, I'd argue there's a show, nay, a franchise that has aged extremely well. A show that went on to have several spin-offs, infinite world building, and exceptional writing. It's what I'd like to call an anime disguised as a cartoon. This is the rise and fall of Ben 10. This video will have spoilers, by the way. Also, it has been a while since I've done a rewatch of all the shows, so some of my info and research may be a bit incorrect. Let me know down in the comments if I got anything wrong. With all that being said, let's go. It's no secret how profound an impact Ben 10 had on kids. The premise was so simple. A 10-year-old finds a cool watch that can transform him into 10 different aliens, hence the name Ben 10. Oh, and coincidentally, the kid's name is Ben Tennyson. You know, Ben later on makes fun of Kevin for how his name is Kevin Ethan Levin.
Your name is Kevin E. Levin? You just lost all remaining pretense of cool.
Oh, what a pillock.
The episodes were always engaging because of how cool each alien was. You had the aliens that every kid wanted the power of, like Heat Blast shooting fire, Accelerate with speed, and Four Arms being the powerhouse. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I always hated it when Grey Matter showed up. I always thought he was a jobber alien who did nothing useful. But you know,
I was a kid then, and apparently not a very bright one.
I couldn't grasp that Ben had an alien that used his intellect instead of his strength like the other aliens. Anywho, the show got by with Ben using the same 10 aliens, but that started to change. The world building got bigger and better. Ben miraculously transformed into a new alien, which, if I remember correctly, was Cannonbolt. I remember being so stoked at the idea of new aliens being in the Omnitrix. What got me so hooked though was Ghost Freak. This guy was a menace. I loved the build up to the reveal that he was actually Zeskar, an alien that was trapped in the Omnitrix. I know a lot of people aren't that crazy about him, but his lore is too cool not to have at least some admiration. The characters were amazing too. Grandpa Max's development as he reveals that he was a plumber to the kids, Gwen learning magic, Kevin Levin being the original Albedo, that he was in essence the first interpretation of an evil Ben, Vilgax being this menacing force that always intimidated me as a kid, and so many more. Looking back at it now, the show was basically an anime. A young boy gets powers, has to save the world, has non-existent parents, mostly until that last episode that I don't even think is even canon anymore, crazy world building, sometimes insane foreshadowing, and flashy transformations. These are all just to name a few. And the tropes only get more as the series continues. They even played with time travel in the classic series. But I'm getting ahead of myself, we'll return to this when I get to the sequel shows. Leave a comment down below who your favorite Ben 10 aliens are and why. Also, please leave a like and subscribe while you're down there. Like I said previously, Ben 10 Classic had an immense impact on kids. However, not long after it ended, a sequel show arrived. Set 5 years after the original show, we got Ben 10 Alien Force. From the very first episode, you can tell that this is not the same show you grew up with. Colors were darker, the tone was more serious, Grandpa Max is missing, Ben hasn't worn the Omnitrix in years, and what the hell are these creepy looking squid monsters? And me, I was all for it. New aliens and new enemies, and building upon the original lore. This is how you do a sequel show. When Alien Force started, it wasn't afraid to actually experiment, instead of just using the old concepts. Looking back now, how the hell did they have the balls to do some of this shit? Having completely new aliens that more or less function completely different than the previous ones, having Kevin become a good guy. On paper, this sounds extremely risky, and yet fans loved it. Why? Well, it's because this show recognizes that kids aren't going to be kids forever. Sure, it aired very soon after the original series ended, but it's one of those shows that adults could even appreciate. And yeah, there may have been fewer viewers in the classic series because, let's face it, kids see kid having powers, kid is happy. Oh yeah, Alien Force also brought with it one of the most talked about aliens to ever grace the fandom. I remember when the show first started airing, and when you watched the intro for the first few episodes, you could see this alien, but he was blacked out, kinda like a locked video game character. And so, it was revealed that this alien is known as Alien X! How do I put this?
I'm a god.
The guy can literally do anything. He just has one major drawback. You see, when Ben enters his form, he has to argue with two different personalities, Bellicus and Serena. If these two and Ben do not come to a mutual agreement to execute a certain action, Ben would basically be stuck as Alien X forever. Honestly, I love the drawback they gave him. It made for interesting characters and made him very popular among the fan base. A bit too popular if you ask me. The show also brought forth possibly the best character in the franchise, Professor Paradox. The guy's a time walker who learned everything there is to know about space and time. Thinking about it now, if this guy wasn't created, Ultimate Alien and Omniverse would be completely different shows. Anyways, Ben was far more mature now. And yeah, it's not like 10-year-old Ben wasn't mature. Being a hero and saving lives is gonna come with some maturity. But he was still a kid, and he had this cocky and rash attitude. In Alien Force though, that wasn't nearly as present. Ben is more humble and more respectful.
Want some help?
You wanna help me? Go away.
Fine by me. No juice for you!
I'm like, what do you say fuck me for?
Well, you know everything I just said that was happening in Alien Force? In the third season, this all completely changed. After having defeated the hybrid invasion, Ben became cocky and arrogant. His character basically reverted back to his 10-year-old self, and if you were watching it religiously back then, you would notice.
That reminds me, I should get some kind of trophy case.
You are so full of yourself lately.
What's the big deal? I got here and I took out the bad guy for you.
This probably happened for two reasons. One, there's a change in the writing staff, and two, Cartoon Network did what any studio does when it wasn't reaching the high numbers of the predecessor. They told the new team to cater more to a younger audience, which resulted in these weird character changes and a more lighthearted tone akin to the original series. And this change was even more present in the show that came next. Before I continue, let me briefly talk about Gamer Supps. These guys have some amazing flavors that seriously boost your energy. They're sweet and easy to make. Use my code OLEAS to get 10% off your order, or use my link in the description down below. Let's now talk about Ultimate Alien. After being given the Ultimatrix, a device that gives him the ability to evolve his alien transformations,
Ultimate Spider Monkey!
oh yeah, evolving to a new form. That's another anime trope to the list. Ben becomes famous, and this isn't really an issue, but the writers clearly took inspiration from Spider-Man with some of these characters and plot lines, and it fits too because Yuri Lowenthal voices both Ben and Spider-Man. Anyways, because he's famous now, he again leans more into his childish and cocky personality. Kevin also becomes evil again briefly, a story arc that had him absorbing Ben's Ultimatrix DNA because he had to defeat Agrigor. Remember this guy? Is he even canon anymore? I'll get back to this. I guess you could say this entire plotline is again more rehashing of the classic series. As a kid, I didn't mind it, but now I can see it as a criticism. Then we got to the return of Ben 10,000. You see, back in the classic series, we had an episode where Ben and Gwen get transported to the future. They meet future Gwen, future Grandpa Max, and even the asshole that Ben would become. He's a bit of a hard ass, always focused on work and putting Max and Gwen second to his priorities. Eventually though, 10-year-old Ben gets through to him, and Ben 10,000 learns to stop being a dickhead. However, there was another episode to do with the future called Ken 10, which was supposed to be our Ben's original future. Well, as you guessed, this future never came to pass. I assume the writers intended for this to be the future, but with the direction changing with UAF, this changed to this guy. Ken 10 Ben 10,000, I guess, is retconned into being a parallel timeline. Paradox also confirms that the future that Ben and Gwen saw in the classic series was also another timeline slash universe. I won't get into the whole episode because there's just too much to explain and too many retcons. The main thing to take away is how a lot of the sequel shows' usage of time travel was built upon from this episode. Ultimate Alien had a controversial ending. Some people have a soft spot for the Esoterica arc, where this cult worships this Cthulhu monster named Dagon, who suspiciously looks like Vilgax. The original Vilgax then fuses with the guy, becoming this ultimate threat, leading to yet again another final showdown with Ben. Only this time, Ben doesn't use the Omnitrix. He uses a sword called Ascalon, which was also created by Azimuth. This thing can basically warp reality. But shit, would you look at this? Vilgax in his ultimate form, Ben using a similar but completely different overpowered device. This is what all their encounters were leading up to. A final ultimate climax. The fight of the century. A fight that's gonna be talked about for years.
You stabbed me!
And thus became the most forgettable final battle in the whole franchise, if you can even call it that. I did, however, like the ending, where Ben is tempted to use the sword, the Ultimatrix, and Dagon's power to get rid of all evil on Earth. The cost? Becoming a god. With the help of Gwen, Kevin, and Julie, he snaps out of it, and we get a nice quick montage sequence. We now get to Omniverse.
It's hero time.
Gwen leaves for college, taking Kevin with her, leaving Ben all alone, or so it would seem. Enter another goated character named Rook. So in essence, Ben 10 has now become a buddy cop show. Love the dynamic between these two characters. We do get cameos from Gwen and Kevin here and there, and we get some amazing concepts like the Nematrix and malware. But you see, Omniverse didn't just take place in the present. We also sometimes flash back to the past, to 11-year-old Ben. The show plays with non-linearity often, jumping back between these 2 points in time, but with that comes a great cost. Retcons retcons and inconsistencies. Don't get me wrong, Omniverse had some insanely sick concepts. The show had a full story arc dedicated to Feedback, supposedly one of Ben's favorite aliens when he was 11. But thanks to this evil upgrade-looking bastard called Malware, Feedback was killed and erased from the Omnitrix, leaving Ben distraught and depressed. We get a cool scene where present Ben and young Ben talk, metaphorically, where he forgives himself. This epiphanic moment leads to Feedback's return. But let's just pause here for a second. So you're meaning to tell me that Feedback was a new alien Ben got sometime after the classic series ended, but in Alien Force, there was no mention of him? Even with Chromosome practically having the same powers as Feedback, we didn't get a slight smile from Ben or even a mention? A simple answer, obviously, is that the writers hadn't thought of Feedback yet, which is normal. The writers have stated multiple times that they make up things as they go. But you see, there's a piece of headcanon among the fandom which I fully chose to believe. In Alien Force, it is stated that Ben had stopped using the Omnitrix for a while. We have never been given a reason for this though. The closest thing we have is how the writers originally intended for the loss of Feedback to be the reason he took off the watch. This was, however, changed and never implemented in the show. Personally, that is a great reason for him to put it down. It's a tragic loss for an 11-year-old to go through, and it segues perfectly into the more mature Ben we saw in Alien Force. You could also make the argument that the reason Feedback is never mentioned in UAF is because Ben blocked it out mentally, or just doesn't want to talk about it at all. But with this constant going back and forth between the past and present came a lot of timeline confusion and retcons, like how Kevin had come after Ben with a new amalgam form sometime after the classic series ended. Which leads me to question, what is the real reason for including 11-year-old Ben? You guessed it. Cartoon Network did not want to let go of classic Ben. After all, he's the iteration of the character that brought the IP its initial popularity. Kind of related to this, Omniverse had some really questionable aliens. What the is Blocks? You're telling me a Lego alien exists? Also, there was a portion of the series that had this guy called Skurd attached to Ben, which gave him the ability to use some of his different alien powers while being in another form. As a kid, I just thought it was some cool thing, but looking back now, I can totally see the corporate side of things. Clearly, this was a way to get new toys on the market. However, this toy line apparently was cancelled. Omniverse also retconned Kevin's backstory, like a ridiculous amount. In Alien Force, it was retconned that Kevin's dad was a plumber who worked alongside Grandpa Max and was killed by this dude called Ragnarok. It was also revealed that Kevin is an Osmosian, an alien that can absorb power. While in Omniverse, it turns out that was a load of BS. There's this guy called Cervantes, a former plumber who conducted experiments on aliens and humans. One of these experiments was Kevin. So his entire backstory involving his father, non-existent. His entire backstory of being an Osmosian, they aren't aliens, but apparently what Cervantes called mutants. So what, Agrigor was a mutant, not an alien? What about
Fastest course to Osmos 5.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck. Oh my.
Anywho, this is what happens when new writers come in with a new vision. Personally, it's not a huge deal, but I still think it would have made the show less retcon-y, and it would have flowed better with the previous series if they expanded upon the original lore. Omniverse's final arc had everything to do with time travel and the multiverse. This was our Spider-Verse and Multiverse of Madness before the MCU shit on the concept. As a kid, I loved it. It was awesome to see Gwen 10 back and seeing Ben 10K, yes, a new version of Ben 10,000, which was also the reason for how Alien Fusions became canon. You guessed it, more toys. The Time War was a great story arc, having it end with another retcon, that Ben himself was the reason he got the Omnitrix in the first place. Oh yeah, this arc was also subtly foreshadowed back in Alien Force.
You saved the world dozens of times.
Hundreds, actually. In fact, on one occasion, you and I worked together to save the entire universe. Never mind.
Overall, the final arc had some ups and downs, but ultimately, I was satisfied. There's a lot I didn't get into about Omniverse, which I would love to dive further into. Let me know down below if you guys want that. And that's the story of Ben 10. Nothing else came after this. It was a complete package of 3 shows with a mostly coherent story that was never coming back. No. I haven't seen the reboot series. I watched the first few episodes when it came out, but I lost interest pretty quickly. Ben is a kid again. The show is now more lighthearted in tone and clearly intended for a new generation of kids. I saw from a distance that some interesting concepts came into play, where Ben turns into Vilgax and how the original series somehow played a part. I haven't even seen this episode, but I assume it's more multiversal shenanigans.
It's the universe. We're in the space beyond.
Then what's that?
That is the next universe over. I don't like it at all. The physics are terribly counterintuitive.
After already experiencing a great story with the 3 shows, this change to a lighthearted tone was something that was of no interest to me. I assumed this is because of the network wanting to gain more viewership and thus more money by catering to kids. And that's what I think ultimately caused the downfall of Ben 10. The inconsistent writing of Ben's character, the reboot series, and even some questionable Omniverse inclusions are where the show was at its weakest. The reboot series, in my opinion, took a step back and no longer focused on evolving the franchise as a whole.
Okay. Thank you all for watching. I'm gonna see you on the next one.